Hello and welcome to another episode of Senior Spot. Today I'm really pleased to have as a guest Richard Anthony, who is part of A&A Easy Transitions, a company that is really going to make a difference in moving someone from point A to point B in our senior community. So thank you, Richard. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me. It's my pleasure.
Excellent. So, I did a little tease there with, moving people from one place to another, but, tell me, what is A&A Easy Transitions? What is your mission?
Our mission is to make people's transitions as easy as we can, and that involves a lot of different things. And we've tried to set ourselves up as both a move management company, but also a moving company.
Okay.
So that we can pretty much offer our clients everything. I never like to use the word full service because there's always something someone's looking for that you might have to outsource or find. But basically, we can do everything for our clients, from moving things around in their homes if they want to stay there, if the first part of a transition might be making it easier to be at home. But we can also just move a few pieces of furniture for them from point A to point B, or we can do the entire process of downsizing them, organizing, helping them figure out what's going to fit in the new place.
Okay.
Packing, moving, unpacking. If facilities allow us, we will hang pictures and hang televisions.
So soup to nuts.
And put
you
things
can do things soup to nuts.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you mentioned the word, I think most people are familiar with what a traditional moving company would do.
Right.
But I want to backtrack to when you mentioned the word move management.
Yep.
I think that, I've done a couple of moves myself, but typically the oversight and being able to, do things and get things arranged, I was the move manager.
Right.
So can you explain to me how this would help seniors in terms of, downsizing or just moving to a new location? What does move management mean?
Well, to me, and I guess other people have different views of it, but to me, it's being able to work with our clients to help them figure out how's it going to be easy and what's going to work when they move in. Because a lot of times they've been in an apartment or a home for 30, 40, 50 years, sometimes even longer, and they're probably moving into, a third or a quarter of the square footage. So a lot of times they feel like, well, we want to take everything, but it doesn't work.
Right.
So the management piece...
It's hard to prioritize, too, what it is that you want to take. And I don't know anybody that's ever moved into a new place that hasn't miscalculated a piece of furniture actually fitting. So, you buy a couch that's too big for the space, or you buy a chair that's too small for the space. So that's a big part of it.
One of the things we like to do that we learned early on is, even though a lot of communities will give you a floor plan for your new space, what the floor plans don't always show are where are there jut-outs in the walls, where are the heating units, where is the air conditioning ductwork. So we will very often go in and remeasure where are the plugs. Which is very critical important to where you're going to place things. So that's another piece that we will offer, is we'll happily go in and remeasure and make sure, because you might think you have 80 inches on one wall, but what if there's a 4-inch jut-out at one end, or there's a window in the way, or the two pieces actually are 82 inches.
Right.
So we will go in, we've had many clients who we go in, we'll remeasure, and then we'll help them measure the stuff they think they want to take.
Excellent.
We also do things, I've done the exercise with several clients, what I call my A and B list, which is where we'll go through what are the things that you really want to take, and then what are the things that you'd like, but if they don't fit or we can't make it work,
I like that.
you are willing to leave behind and figure out a different way to dispose of them, or give them to people, whatever that might be.
Right. Oh, no, that makes perfect sense, because you do have your A and B list of items.
That's right.
And sometimes people just visually can't picture things, so I think it's very helpful to have someone technically go in there and map it out for them.
And that's a big piece of what we will do, for our, again, we're trying to make it easy. We really
That's
want...
the name A&A Easy Transitions.
That's right.
So, and I have to go back to, where did the A&A come from?
That's actually my last name, which is Anthony, and my partner Dick, when we started the company, his last name is Arnold.
All right, that works.
So A&A, and we kind of were thinking about it, said, well, it gets us at the top of a lot of the lists.
Very clever.
And it stands out. And then we wanted to make sure that people understood easy was a part of it, that we're trying to make life easy for our clients.
So the move management is definitely a differentiator, for you, and making it easy and planning things out, which certainly does not come along with a traditional move. So, is there any other ways that you differ from a traditional moving company? So can you share some of those with us?
Absolutely. I mean, traditional movers are very good at what they do, but a lot of times they're just coming in, taking your stuff, they make you empty things out. There's a packing piece that's very often involved that they will or will not offer at extra rates or whatever. And then they basically, I don't like to use the term, but we use the term dump and run. They basically bring your furniture in, they put it down, and then they go.
Sure.
We, don't make you empty out your drawers. So things like dressers and end tables, we will move as is. We also will never do a dump and run. We will always place things in the apartment where they think they're going to fit, but then we ask our clients, well, does this work, or do you want to rearrange?
Right.
So we will spend the time to rearrange things and make that apartment or that studio or whatever it is look proper, comfortable. This is their new home.
Right.
So we want to make it feel that way. We also work with our clients to try to figure out what happens to the stuff that doesn't go. A moving company's not going to do that.
Right. So what do you do? You help find a new home for things, or
Well,
what
there
do you do?
are different things. In some cases, the clients want to give things to relatives.
Sure.
And if it's in our area, we will deliver it, and we'll work out doing the delivery ourselves, because being a licensed moving company, we have that luxury.
That is a huge benefit. Absolutely.
If they don't have a family that they can move it to, we do things like I have 3 or 4 different sources who will either buy or put on consignment furniture that's in good condition, and home goods, not just furniture. We have a couple of different donation places where we can donate items for our clients, and then in the case where things are just junk, we will do the junk removal piece.
Okay.
And we can do that, we feel, more cheaply and more efficiently than a lot of the junk companies that come in. And they're good at what they do, don't get me wrong.
Right.
But we can also
the
offer the whole service.
And I like that there's options. So you're looking at an item, you're looking at this, vase here.
Sure.
Do I want to keep this? Can I keep this? And you go through the options with them, because I think people need to understand that there's more options than giving it to somebody or throwing it away. There's all the stuff that comes in between, and I don't think that people realize that.
No, I don't think they do.
And it would be difficult necessarily to find the resources to coordinate that. So you're really coordinating a lot of other things as well.
And we feel we're very good at customizing everything for each individual client. There are no 2 moves that are the same.
True. No 2 homes are the same.
No 2 homes are the same. No 2 people want to do the same thing. No families have the same situation. So we will work it with whatever they want to do. Very often, we may just do the move piece, and it could be months before the family figures out, okay, we're putting the house or the condo on the market now. Now we need to organize a little more. We can come in and stage a house, work with the realtor if they'd like us to, remove things to make it easier, or just clean the place out.
Well, one word keeps popping into my head over and over again as you describe all these different things, is patience. You have, and your partner and your crew have a lot of patience, because I know that going through moves myself, I remember I shared with you, previously, that when my father was selling the house that I grew up in, this was 20 years ago, and they had been in the house for 23 years, and my mom had passed away already, so he was there solo, and certainly things accumulated even more after she passed away. But I remember going through that. I just had no patience. I was so frustrated, I just wanted to get it done. And then, sure enough, I said, please don't do this again. He moved into a condo, passed away a year and a half later, and I had to do it all over again. And I certainly didn't have the patience. So the thing that I'm hearing loud and clear is you have patience.
Yes,
for
we have a lot of
people.
patience, and our crew is wonderful. We're lucky because the majority of our crew has worked with us for 4 or more years.
Excellent.
And they do. Everybody has a high level of patience. We know we have to listen to what our clients are really asking us to do. So yeah, it's a huge piece of what we do.
Definitely. So I would love to hear a little bit more about how you and your partner Dick got started with this.
Sure.
And, what brought you to being drawn to this as a career?
When I was in my old career in the food manufacturing industry, my stepfather became ill and unfortunately passed. And at the time they had a home in upstate New York, and my mom was living in Brooklyn, where I grew up. And the first step was my mom didn't want the house in upstate New York anymore. So I got my first taste of how do you downsize, a 3-bedroom, nice retirement house in upstate New York. And so I spent a lot of weekends traveling from Massachusetts to upstate New York to, get rid of the things that were in the house, figure out with my brother, do you want any of this? Do I want any of this? Or is it stuff that we have to, dispose of? And we had to find, like we do now, who can take the stuff away for us, who can do this.
And wouldn't you have loved to have been able to call up an A&A Easy
Transitions?
Transitions?
Absolutely.
Because I feel the same thing about my company. When my father, I wish that there was a company that I could have called upon to be able to
Absolutely.
help, with doing that. So
It would
this
have made
isn't
life
just
so much
helping the
easier.
clients, this is helping their families too. That,
Absolutely.
that may be, trying to manage this. And sometimes, well, let's just face it, family members butt heads. So, this actually can really help to keep situations very...
And your own situation is something that comes up quite a bit, where we run into, a parent's passed away, but there's an apartment or there's a house, and they don't know what to do.
Right.
And
there's a lot of feelings maybe too of guilt or what they should have to do. And I think a lot of your solutions make people feel good about where something might be if they're not going to carry it with them.
I very often, and so does Dick and so does Doug, our other partner, we never try to tell our client, you need to do this. We will recommend, here are the options you have. We think, any of these possibilities would work for you. What would you like to do? Sure. We'll never go in on any job and say, well, you need to do this. That's not the way we work, and it's not the way it should work.
And that's nice because, people want to have ownership over, over many of their possessions that become quite near and dear to them.
Oh,
and
of course.
It's hard to part with things, and
this is their lives,
you're a
and
problem
we don't want to mess
solver.
them up.
Exactly.
Yeah, this is their lives, and again, it goes back a little bit to what's important to you. What do you feel you have to have at your new place? Sometimes it might be something silly. It might be as simple as, well, that vase. My grandmother gave me that vase,
exactly.
and it's like, fine, great, let's do
know that story, so you're going to listen
you have to
and
ask,
acknowledge that. Yep.
Precisely, and you have to find out. You have to ask those questions.
So the story, the story behind the company, obviously, that makes perfect sense. That's how a lot of people get involved in things that they're really good at doing, like yourself, where you had a personal experience, you learned from it and said, you know what, I want to make a difference. I want to do this for other people.
And Dick had a similar circumstance as well when his mom passed. He had to clean out things to do as well. And then we also, interestingly enough, both Dick and I were the ones responsible for, getting things to and from trade shows in our prior industries. So we knew the shipping piece. We knew the moving piece. You knew that you had to pack things properly or they were going to get damaged moving. I moved a couple of factories from one location to the other, so I knew those logistics involved. Right. So that in some ways, the moving part was actually the easier part for us.
And that's so interesting because I would be great at listening to somebody and validating, but I wouldn't know anything about the move piece.
But then we started to understand that, wait a minute, there's more to it. Yes, we've got to get things from A to B, and we've got to do it safely and efficiently, but these people have a lot of things that are critical to them.
Absolutely.
So that's when we kind of learned that, not so much the patience piece, but the listening piece.
Well, it's a great combination because you do have to have the professional piece that once the decisions are made that you're going to keep things safe and you're going to have it arrive at point B in good condition.
Absolutely.
And we know, and everybody has different stories, and things happen. Things happen in transit. But for the most part, you have the combination of both the personal experience with it and then the professional experience with it in the logistics.
Yeah, it's worked out really well. It's not the direction you think you're going to end up in, but it's 8 years now that we've had the company and going strong. And I'd like to think we have a great reputation. The places that use us.
Great things.
Yeah, the
you
places
wouldn't be
that
sitting
use
here
us.
if I hadn't.
I appreciate that.
Great things.
And we know that the communities that use us and refer us and the people have been wonderful. And we've met some really cool people too. That's the other thing. I don't think I would have met.
Right?
Exactly.
And that's how I feel too. We interact with very similar folks in the community, and
Absolutely.
The stories are amazing. And you know what? Sometimes people just want to be able to tell their story, and it feels really good. It makes it real.
Absolutely.
It makes people feel valued. And I always walk away feeling like I got so much out of learning and hearing a story.
Oh, most definitely.
And I actually feel flattered that people want to tell you the story.
I agree with you 100%.
It's like a gift.
Yeah, it's part of the side of our job that's wonderful. Mm-hmm. The other side that's very cool, and I have to share this story because it was really unique. Dick's son, Douglas, got involved with the company about 2 years into the run. So it's 6 years, and he's become a partner in the company. The first time he was on a job and got a hug, Doug looked at his dad and I and just said, now I understand why you guys do this.
Yes.
And it's something that's very cool. We have clients will give you hugs when you're done sometimes because they were so lost and so unsure of what are we going to do.
Yep. And you help to create their new home, which
Absolutely,
is such a personal thing, and it's So I love the idea that, the hug for him was the clincher.
That did it, and
You know.
ever since then, Doug's like, I got a hug.
Yeah,
and
what's
he
better
still
than that?
talks about it like, oh my goodness, I got a hug. It was
Well, and I'm
great.
sure there have been many hugs since then,
There have
too.
been, absolutely.
Thus many success stories, I'm sure. So
Yeah.
if you could think of one or two, I know that the audience would love to hear, what makes it a successful story? Or even going over, what's the process? Like, where do you start? You obviously pick up the phone and call you, but, how does it all come together?
Sure. There are 2 or 3 different ways. Obviously, the first one is either someone gets a brochure from Council on Aging or from a community they're thinking of moving into, or maybe someone told them about us, and it starts there, and then it starts with a phone call. Whether they speak to myself directly or we now have Stephanie in our office who does a wonderful job, and we try to get Steph to take the first calls and everything, and it becomes an issue of, is it something we can do over the phone where we can figure out, a lot of the assisted living and memory care communities that we work with, we don't necessarily have to do an initial consult.
Okay,
So
because
from
you're
there,
already familiar with the
because
layout
we're familiar
and
with
the
the layout of the
property.
apartments, and you can't take as much.
Right.
But if the person wants a consult, absolutely, I'm there, we'll schedule it, and we'll go do a consult and look at things. And then you figure out, do you need us to pack things? Are you going to pack things? Do you need wardrobe boxes for your hanging clothing? What pieces of furniture are you going to take? How many square feet are you moving into, so that we kind of know where are you coming from, where are you going to?
Right.
And those are the easier, we do that, we can schedule those relatively quickly.
That seems pretty straightforward, but I'm sure there are some very unique things that happen that are not straightforward.
There are people who will say, well, I have this giant piano that I don't know what to do with.
That comes up a lot.
And unfortunately, pianos are very hard these days. In some cases, the apartment or just won't hold a piano.
Sure.
If you have a baby grand or a grand
Right.
piano, unfortunately, if you've been in 3,500 or more square feet, and you're going into 700 or 800 or 900, where's that piano going to go?
Right.
So those are tough ones. We've had a few where people are avid flower growers, and every room and every surface has tons of flowers. But they're not taking all their furniture. They're like, what do we do with the plants? And you kind of have to work out a plan, what are we going to do? Do we have to call someone in who's going to take the plants? Do you have family you can give the plants to?
Right, yeah.
How many can you take
Well,
so
and,
we
and
can
it's
bring it?
interesting because that never would have crossed my mind.
Oh, yeah.
Ever. But I think of people in my own family that have the green thumb, and
Absolutely.
and that, in our family, my mother-in-law, I think, has a plant from when her parents were alive, and you get it, you put it in, you split it, you give it to other people.
That's
and
right.
It's just you want that to continue.
You want it to continue.
I never would have thought of that.
Yeah, that's a biggie.
Wow.
And we've kind of added the service of, okay, well, we'll transport your plants, and all right, do we have to put these in boxes? Do they go in the little truck? Do we bring a car and put them in cars? So we'll work with the families, and those are the questions that Steph asks and I ask, or if I'm doing a consult for a larger job, okay, well, what's happening with all your plants? A lot of people have very fancy artwork.
Yes.
So you have to look at, are you taking all of it? How old is it? How valuable is it? There have been a few rare cases where either the client or ourselves have brought in actual professional artwork packers, because they have things that are hundreds of years old.
Right.
That it makes more sense for them to pay a little more and have someone who does nothing but pack that type of artwork than have me bubble wrap it and put it in boxes and transport it, which is 90% of the time we do it.
Right.
And no incidents, it's not a problem. I mean, we even had a client about a year ago who she painted, and we moved her to Newbury Court in Concord, but her basement had over 400 canvases that she had painted, and she had no idea what she was going to do with them.
So
we had to
what
recommend a storage place, a temperature-controlled, humidity, climate-controlled storage facility for her, and then we came in and spent 2 days wrapping all of the paintings, and then a day and a half transporting them to the storage unit and setting them up the way she wanted, so that she and her daughter could access the paintings, of landscapes in one set.
They could go and they could find them if they needed to.
If they needed them, right. We brought pallets in so that nothing would be on the floor, so that they would avoid water damage. We set things up so that they were not touching any outside walls.
I just hope that I hope that someone gets to enjoy those 400 paintings.
Yeah, I do too, because some of them are actually very good. She was very
bet.
talented. She's not one of these people who was just drawing circles and lines. No, she had some very, very nice paintings.
Yeah. Well, and it's nice because you acknowledged that was important to her, and
that was huge
that's
to
a
her.
big priority.
And we worked with her to figure out how do we get it done.
That's
You
great.
know, so that's just another one of those interesting things that comes along.
I never would have thought of plants. Artwork I did think of, but I
Yeah.
am not a connoisseur, so I do not have
those are-
expensive artwork.
Right. Pianos, artwork, plants have been the biggest issues that come. Occasionally, you get a piece of furniture that's like enormous, and you have to work out, okay, how did this get in here? How do we get it out? Do we have to take things apart?
That's what's so surprising is that when you can't get something out, how in the world did it get in?
Well,
minus like a crane or something, some sort of
And
extravagant
and
mechanism
some people
to
have
get it in
actually
there.
had pieces of furniture craned into their homes. Fortunately, we've only run into that case once, and they were moving out of states far enough away where it made no sense for us to do it, so I brought in a partner that we use
Sure.
to take care of that. But yeah, they had an armoire that was like 4 pieces that all of them were too big to go through the doors.
So
Yeah.
that actually leads to another question I
Sure.
want to find out from you.
Absolutely.
Is what location do you cover? Because you mentioned that was a little bit too far.
We cover all of Massachusetts, though our strength is eastern Massachusetts, basically from the Worcester area east toward Boston.
Okay.
We don't normally go into downtown Boston because there are permit issues and other things
Just
that
the parking itself,
and parking
you know.
that's difficult. So we tend to stay from Cambridge out.
Okay.
We will go to Rhode Island, to southern New Hampshire. We will go out to the western part of the state if people have family there. We've had several families that were like, well, Mom's moving here, but I live so and so. Can you transport things out to my house? Absolutely.
Sure, because like you mentioned, I mean, it's going to go maybe to different family members, and they're going to be in
Correct.
different places, and
So, but-
that's a really nice way to roll it all
And-
in. Because typically, if something is, that people want people to enjoy things, while they're alive, they want people to enjoy, this vase. I want
Indeed.
you to have it now.
Sure.
Granted, it wouldn't be trouble transporting the vase, but let's just say it was,
No.
a 300-pound vase.
Well, a perfect-
you would deliver it to my home.
Perfect
which is
example.
huge.
Just yesterday, we had a client who we've moved twice already, who had a beautiful long-legged work desk that they wanted their daughter to have. Well, the desk was in Newton. The daughter lived in Bedford, New Hampshire. And we brought a truck and we transported the desk up to Bedford,
That's
New Hampshire,
great.
so that the daughter could have the
And
desk.
they knew that they could trust you because they had already worked with you.
That's
they knew
right.
that you were going to
Absolutely.
deliver it with care, and the personality
And-
certainly helps too.
Thank you.
It
And,
certainly makes
yeah,
a difference.
And it was, but we do a lot of that where, we've had other families where, people were from the Wayland area and stayed here, but one of the daughters lived out in Great Barrington.
Okay.
And she was like, well, I really want, a good chunk of my dad's furniture. Can you get it out there? And we were like, absolutely, not a problem.
Yeah, and that really speaks to the move management piece of it, because it's not just, like you said, just dump it and go.
No,
because there's so
absolutely
much
not.
more to it. You always forget something. You always forget this really needed to go here or there, and that's great peace of mind knowing
Yep.
that it's not one size fits all, and it's going to be customized,
All the time.
to the person, to the individual.
All the time.
So going back to, so you use the term senior transitions company. Mm-hmm. Is that like the official term for like your
That's
professional area?
That's what we like to call
Okay.
ourselves. Yeah, we like to call ourselves a senior transition company.
Okay.
Because it's not always about a moving piece. There's a lot to it.
I like that,
So we
because
like
it's
to
the
offer,
transition.
because it's a transition, right? And there's more to just moving. It's not just moving. So that's what we like to call ourselves.
Excellent. So besides it was your father-in-law, correct?
Stepfather.
Stepfather. So
Yep.
besides your stepfather, how did this all come together though? So what was the time frame between when that happened, when your partner had that experience, and then when you said, this is what we're going to do?
Interestingly enough, there was a couple of years in between. I had a second incident where my brother passed suddenly, and I had to move my mom out of New York, so I also did the same thing with her home in
Okay.
New York. What really sparked it was that Dick and I were both laid off within a couple of months of each other from careers we'd been in for 30 years.
Which was part
I
of the
was in the
move.
food manufacturing piece where where I was moving factories and Dick was in a hardware engineer, and he was doing trade shows and moving equipment to trade shows and forth. And we talked about it, we're like, what are we going to do? And we couldn't find jobs in our own fields that were worth it at that stage in our careers.
Sure.
And interestingly enough, my ex-wife had a client who used someone who said they were a move manager, who took a 10-room home and put it in a 3-room apartment.
That's impressive.
And well, it really wasn't, because the spare bedroom was nothing but all the stuff that couldn't fit anywhere else in the apartment.
So it just created another problem.
Dick and I went in and looked at that, and we were like, wait a minute, this isn't right. We can do better than this. And that was the impetus. That was the point where we said, yeah, we're starting this company, and we're gonna get a moving license, because there's a call for small moves to assisted livings, as well as these larger moves. And just year by year, we've grown the services because we listen to the clients.
Sure.
Well, could you do this? Could you do that? And we're like, oh, wait a minute, that's a great idea. Yes, we can do that.
So, I mean, you're just continuing to build and grow, just like you mentioned the plants or the artwork or all those things. You wouldn't probably have thought of that from day one.
No,
when
you listen to your clients and you build your business based on what do they need done,
right.
And that's what we continue to do, and it'll continue to go like this for, as long as we have the business. We'll just keep making adjustments.
Well, and I like how that you mentioned, when it was the heavy armoire, or if it was, the piece of artwork that you had another company come in and do. I like the fact that you're looking to really protect the items.
Oh, yeah.
And you will refer out to somebody and connect them with it. So
Absolutely.
That's
yeah,
important.
We're going to do what's right for the client, what's right for whatever it is they need to do. We're not going to so selfish. We'll do it ourselves.
So, do you have any parting tips or anything like that you could recommend as someone starting to think about downsizing? Before they give you a call, like what are some things that they could do to get prepared for it?
The simplest thing is just give yourself some time to figure out what's important to you. Because a lot of people, unfortunately, are just forced into the situation where I have to move and they're not sure what's up. If you have the time, give it some thought.
So being proactive.
To be proactive, right. That's a great word to use for it. Try to come up with a plan. And if not, try to just identify what you think is important to you, and then let us help you figure out how we're going to get it done.
And that's a great idea, and not to take pressure from anybody and really figure it out for yourself.
Absolutely.
So from beginning to end, before they even call, you're giving them tips, telling them to be proactive to figure it out.
Absolutely.
And then you're with people throughout the process, even after the fact. So
that's right. Once our thing we like to say is, once a client, always a client. We'll always be there for the client, their family, whatever.
So A&A Easy Transitions, with two marvelous, personally related, partners, plus a new partner that likes to get hugs and realizes why it's so important to do this. So
absolutely.
I'm so happy that you came in to talk to us about A&A
Thank you so much for having me, Jen.
Easy Transitions. Thank you
so
much.
My pleasure. Thanks a lot.